Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
It is I who want you.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I'm Sid Part 2, joining me today is...
The Comics Kid 2099.
And Alfie, a geek for fun.
Yay! And Alfie picked our topic this week, if I'm remembering correctly, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay, now here's the thing, and you have to forgive me. I have no fucking idea what we're talking about tonight. I was racking my brain about this all day, and I have no memory whatsoever.
So it's like the unknown. I mean, yeah, obviously that's gonna weigh on you,
wasn't it? Wasn't it fear? Oh,
damn it,
sorry.
Ruben! I had a bit.
Oh, sorry. Oh,
bit. I was working it up. I was gonna blow this guy's mind and have him go, "Oh, that was it," but you ruined it, and it's not. Yeah, it's fine.
I thought for a minute you had misremembered. I thought you were gonna say it was the unknown. And I was like, what?
Man, we had a sketch. I need to message you beforehand before I try and prank Ian on this goddamn show. Because you are the worst wingman ever.
Usually I am so good about remembering and like actually, considering and thinking about this stuff. And just this time, I could not remember. I had trouble remembering, so I married an axe murderer last time. But I was able to come up with that by the day before. I don't know what it was. I had no memory of fear. I guess I was too excited about the shipping video going up this... the shipping video just went up this week as we're recording, but we're like a week ahead on recording, so it's like 3 episodes ago now. So yeah, I don't know. It was a thing. But yeah, fear. Okay, what made you want to talk about that?
See, like, I don't know. I kind of wanted to, because my time here, Geek Gentlemen, I was, going through some of the previous, what's some videos you've done on here, that topic ideas, what kind of themes you've gone for. And, the stuff we've been on here has mostly been, media-based or topic-based. But then I remember some of the stuff you did with Steve previously, and it was just there's some, more, deeper cut things of, more broader, general, ideas and concepts, which I thought, hey, that'd be fun to do. So that was just the first one that popped into my head.
Oh no, that's totally cool. I like those big thoughty things because there's really it's just so broad. You can talk about anything. We can talk about horror movies. We can talk about anxiety. We can talk about just anything that we want to when we go with such a big topic like that. But the biggest problem always seems to be where to start. And just because I like doing this shit to him, Ruben, where are we going to start by talking about fear?
I guess we could talk about our own fears. I don't know how far that'll get us, because my fears are very mundane. I don't know about everyone else. And I don't know if we're going to get into really heavy, I have a fear of failure in my life, because my fears are I don't like stinging insects, stuff, boring stuff like that. So
that would totally be the most Ruben thing ever, though. If we go, okay, what's everyone's greatest fear? And Alfie and I come up with this soul wrenching shit, and then we just get to Ruben. He's like, I don't like bees.
Bees, I'm not a fan of them. I don't hate bees, but I don't really seek them out.
I mean, I think that's interesting because what Ruben's talking about there is kind of phobias. I think I have a general fear and an existential dread kind of way. I kind of play it off with a cavalier attitude, but But like phobias are something I find interesting because I don't have a ton of those. Whenever anyone talks about like, oh, are you afraid of this? I'm kind of like, no, I'm not really afraid of anything like that. There's things I don't want to deal with. There's things that would be unpleasant. But like my reaction's generally like, no, I'm not afraid of anything. And I'm reminded of I think it was Kevin Hart or maybe it was Cat Williams, but one of them had a joke where it's like, you afraid of anything? The guy's like, no. Oh, okay. So you wake up in the morning, there's a crocodile in your bedroom, you just be cool with that? And I'm like, that's so very specific. But like, so there's a difference between a fear, a dread of something, and like something that is shocking and quote unquote scary, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So like, yeah, I don't have a fear of insects, but if I'm just standing around outside, I don't know, at like a cookout or something, and a bee flies like right at the ear, yeah, I jump, I like swat at it or some shit, because like it's like a very physical and intense immediate reaction, but I wouldn't really call that a fear, would you guys?
No,
No.
but like I think that's. See, this is interesting, which I guess we can maybe talk about something. So when you get to like fear, like the base like idea, which a lot of people like kind of bring up, studies for and against kind of thing. But like the most general assumptions is it's a survival mechanism. It evolved in us to develop fear so that we could like react to things like stinging insects because that's uncomfortable. Like no one wants to feel that pain. But if you didn't have that kind of like reaction when you saw something like that, you wouldn't react in time because your body wouldn't like have that sudden burst. So that is the most like natural occurring fear. Like that's something like a dog can have. Stuff like that is just general, the source of it all. But what we kind of define as fear like now has like evolved as we have got like culture and different things in terms of just like, now we have to be fear of like what politicians are doing, or now we have to be scared of the world around us, or like mental health or stuff like that. So while we won't normally have even just fear for entertainment's sake now, which is like an interesting thing. So there's like, I do think like we don't generally see that as fear, like the bee thing, but there's probably the closest you could ever get to like what is the most core fear there is, I think.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, like there's an interesting like underlying topic to what you're talking about there, which kind of, I can never remember the names for these philosophical terms, and I think that's by design, but there's an idea of like a hierarchy of needs leading to a form of survival. So if you imagine yourself as like a hunter-gatherer, you don't have the ability to have a fear for your civil liberties because your fear is about whether or not you're going to starve to death or whether you're going to be chasing an animal and end up getting gored by it or something. Your fears, your concerns are immediately there in front of you in the moment. Whereas once you've got the needs of a place to sleep, food, once you've got those needs, then your fears can kind of, or then your worries, your problems enter kind of another tier. So like once you're living in a society, then you can fear about your rights in said society. You can fear about the standards of culture in your society. You can have fears about the expression of language in your society. That's something that's actually pretty common now, with like things like gender pronoun debates. That's kind of demanding people respect those is kind of a demand based on a certain level of comfort within a society, and it's coming from a fear of not getting to maintain that standing, or not getting to properly have said standing. So yeah, that does become kind of an interesting way to look at it, is as you kind of go up the ladder, you you gain new problems. To use a tired old cliche, maybe the grass is always greener. But I don't know. It's there's a lot with that one. There's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, I think maybe if we want to go at like a little bit by bit, I think like a general question I'll ask you guys is, do you think what if you had to like put a scale to things, as much as it is impossible to kind of like quantify stuff like this, which is just like a feeling, do you feel existential terror, as in like your own life, your own personal worries and society and that kind of broad aspect, is more inherently scary to you than the fear of like a primal, I need food, I need to survive?
Damn it, I was really hoping Ruben would jump in on that one, because I don't know. It's... Okay, so... The one thing I got really good at in philosophy was trying to think that I thought of something original, and I'm sure this isn't. I'm sure you can find someone else who said this and said it better. But, so my big take in philosophy is everybody's got their shit. It's like if I ever become like a well-researched philosopher, like I want that to be my quote. You know, everyone remembers like Sartre's got words are loaded pistols, and Socrates, the unexamined life is not worth living. Ian Harrington, everybody's got their shit. And what I mean by that is, everybody's suffering. Everyone has different levels of problems that they deal with. So, like, the kind of way I talk about this, or the kind of way I try to help people understand that is, everyone in this call has stubbed their toe on a coffee table, or maybe like a corner of a doorway or something, correct? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. And it hurt, and maybe you cursed or something, and you're like, God damn it, ow. Now I want you to imagine if in that moment someone like came around the corner and said to you, hey, don't complain, don't be annoyed about that, because there's people who have broken their legs or lost the ability to feel their legs, or da-da-da-da. And it's like, yeah, sure. And on some quote-unquote objective scale, that's worse than stubbing your toe. But you know what it doesn't help you with? The fact that your toe fucking hurts in the moment. and you can't do anything about that. No matter, you can't outthink a physical pain in the moment. And so that applies to a number of things. No one's technically got it worse than anyone else, as controversial as that is, because it cuts both ways. No one's technically got it worse than anyone else, because everyone's dealing with their own unique circumstances. So when you ask me the question, oh, is an existential fear of living in a society that has fascistic leanings worse than a fear of, whether or not I'll be able to kill wildebeest and eat it tonight? The answer is yes, and also no. It's worse for me because I'm the one living through that, and I can imagine the fear that, hunter-gatherer Ian would have, and how that might be a more direct threat to him than the leanings of a fascistic society are to me in this exact moment. But as far as the anxiety it causes, I'm feeling the anxiety of one thing. I'm not feeling the anxiety of where my next meal's coming from.
Mm-hmm. I think that's... Yeah. Oh, you go ahead, Ruben.
No, I was going to basically agree with Ian there. I think, like you said, the key thing there is, like, everyone's got their own stuff that they're dealing with. And so, like, we were kind of joking about, like, my fear of wasps and stuff. Like when I was younger, like even just, you know, when I was just right out of high school, like that was no laughing matter. Like I was scared to death of them. Like, and people will stupidly say, "Oh, if you don't bother it, it won't bother you," and that is a load of horse crap right there. Like I felt like anytime I went outside, I was going to get stung by these creeps, and so like that may seem small and like pitiful compared to like, you know, like, is there life after, you know, like, is there life after death? Is this all there is? Like, you know, you see people online like, you know, is this all there is? Like, just get a job, you know, work for 40 years and then you die. Like, you know, stuff that's really heavy and like stuff like that. I don't know. It may bother me more now than it did, but like, you know, I still just, you know, I just go to work and then I come home. Like that doesn't have as much of an impact on me as like stinging insects. So like, even though like it seems like a silly thing, like, you know, you're right, Ian, everyone, you know, if one of you said like, I have a fear of clowns, like a lot of people have fear of clowns. That's something that does not make any sense to me, but a lot of people have that. So like, that's something that I'm not going to be able to relate to that, but I can see that like everyone, you know, everyone's got their own thing. Like you were saying, I agree with that.
Thank you. Yeah, Alfie, you were going to say something though?
I was just saying your point really reminded me of, I don't know if either of you have been reading Heroes in Crisis. I know it's kind of got like a rap going for it at the moment, but your point about like everyone's got different shirt, the primal Ian versus the normal one, and like you can't really relate to that, is Tom King, of course, the master of existential terror and sadness. He did I can't remember the name of the character. It's Narc, exactly. Yeah. He did a little segment where like this character obviously lived in the prehistoric time and now he lives in the modern day. He's talking about like he uses the simulation in this sanctuary place where he can relive his life as a hunter, and he has this like good point is like he goes through all the pros and cons of what his life was back then and what his life is now and the advantages and disadvantages, and he's like it's not better or worse, it's just different. And I think that's the best way you can explain it is everything's kind of just different. There's different feelings to it, and it's very hard to rank a feeling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Tom King is making a career out of just taking philosophy and making it relatable. It's kind of hilarious. Taking philosophy and making it relatable through comics is kind of what Tom King's just been doing. There's like a whole issue of Batman that's just a philosophical example that someone came up with. Mr. Miracle just straight does Kant at one point. It's kind of hilarious. Seriously, Mr. Miracle has an issue where they just go through the ontological argument. And that's why philosophy is dumb, because the word ontological means nothing to you two. You want to know what one of my questions in my first final exam in philosophy was? I have this memorized to this day. What do you think of Kant's critique of Descartes' ontological argument that he just makes existence into a predicate?
I had that too.
Oh, yeah? Yeah?
Yeah, I did it in secondary school.
Oh, good.
I don't say wording, actually. That's kind of creepy.
Yeah, I had to bullshit my way through that question because I was so unprepared for it. Yeah. So like shit like that just blows me away that, you know, philosophy makes itself so damn inaccessible so that all someone has to do is come down and make it relatable, and then suddenly people are like, it's genius!
That's where you just get like stuff like Occam's Razor, where it's just immediately been picked up by people to justify arguments because it's philosophical, but it's been simplified because it's got like actual terms, like everyone knows what a razor is. But then it doesn't make the argument better. It's just people use it for like a thing, as a crutch almost. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a logical fallacy, Alfie. Come on.
Debate me, Ian.
Yeah, right. There's my real fear: being challenged to debate. Debat. No Future Man fans here? Fine. Okay, I'll move on. Ruben, I think you'd really enjoy Future Man if you get the chance to check it out. But
I like that Eliza. Is it Eliza Cope? I liked her in Scrubs, so I may need to check that out.
It's pretty good. Can I just spoil the shit out of something? But like, it's really one of my favorite lines.
Yeah.
They're explaining all the problems with time travel. It's like, if you go back and kill Hitler, you didn't kill Hitler. You just created a dimension where Hitler didn't exist. You created an alternate timeline. It's like, oh, I went and killed Hitler? No! Oddly enough, that is the one thing you never did. It's just really funny. Back to fear. This is the problem with these fucking big-ass heady topics, Alfie, is they're so easy to jump around in. Back to fear.
Alright, Scarecrow.
Yeah, the thing where you talk about with, okay, so everything's different. Well then, why is it that everyone seems to feel fear in very similar ways? What about it? Is it just like, because when we talk about comedy, it's kind of funny to follow this up with How I Married an Axe, or I Married an Axe Murderer. When we talk about comedy, we talk about there's these differences of taste. And so you might find something funny, I might find something not funny. There's very few things that are like universally funny. Like, I'd maybe tempted to say someone getting slapped in the face with a fish, but who knows? Someone who's been slapped in the face with a fish might not find that amusing. It's whatever. Fear seems pretty damn universal. There are things that people are afraid of that other people aren't, but like, once you're experiencing it, it's the reactions are all pretty damn consistent. Some people scream, some people like, suck in air, get real quiet. Like, it's such a different and very physical thing. I kind of want to go back to what you were talking about with there's this very primal nature to it.
Right, because if you go, all right, break it down then. Okay, so reactions to fear. So you've got the screaming, obviously call for help. That's if you see in a pack environment and you see something and something attacks you. Help me! Lots of people. Like, that's something animals do all the time. The physical one where like you see these great videos of like people trying to scare people in like Halloween costumes and just like punch them in the face just instinctively. That's also a fearful action. Like, some people, when they get fear, they just get really defensive and like on guard, which is because, again, it's getting the adrenaline pumping. There's also, like, I guess the curl into a ball kind of fear, when like you just don't want to look at something, you turn your face away. That's again a defensive posture. That's like submission. That's like saying, I'm not a threat, don't hurt me. So if you went through like most of these, you could probably find, okay, here's a thing, here's a thing, here's a thing. Whereas with, like you mentioned, comedy, I think the reason why that's a little different is it's not as inherently linked to survival. So it's not as coded in our just DNA as human beings. It's something we've always kind of had, but it's also something that's kind of different cultures have evolved it in different ways, whereas fear is kind of universal, as everyone experiences death in the same way, kind of thing. And then fear, everything kind of springboards from that core, just as like everything about like culture and society springboards some kind of like reproduction, as like death and reproduction are just what we are as like living creatures. Whereas comedy kind of, it can fit somewhere in there, but it's a lot more harder to define, and it's a lot less because people's tastes are changing all the time, but people's fears kind of just get added onto. A lot of fears don't ever go away.
I think that's a really good point. I also really like the notion of like cultural differences can create different kinds of reactions, but fear seems to be pretty consistent. Like I was recently, or well, it's a couple months ago now, I was watching through a Netflix series called Death by Magic. And it was really, really good. This guy's doing, like, redoing all these, like, his versions of these tricks that have killed magicians. And he's doing them all over the world. And he does a show in Britain. And it's like, God, it is literally one of the best death escapes I've ever seen, where he's being buried alive, but he's being buried alive in a glass coffin that's above ground. So you can see him getting the dirt piled onto him. And you can see the ceiling of the thing start to sag down. And I'm trying to be as graphic as possible with this because I kind of want to create that anxiety. You can see the dirt way on the ceiling kind of sag down, and he's like pushing up against it, and he's kicking and he's screaming, and it doesn't look like he's going to get out. And then the dirt just collapses, and the whole thing crushes him. And this is a show in Britain, and most of the audience was going, oh my. And I'm like, the British are the fucking worst when it comes to reacting to magic shows because they're so goddamn reserved. It's that whole stiff upper lip bullshit, and it ruins magic.
We appreciate it on a deeper level.
Yeah, bullshit. Fucking awful. and so, like, what's really funny about that, though, is, like, your David Blaine's, your Chris Angels, they'll do street magic in America because they're able to make shows out of that, because Americans actually react to stuff and are very animated. David Blaine, like, infamously would go to just the blackest neighborhoods and somehow manage to find the people that would just, like, jump and scream and run around in circles and not believe it. It made for great television. But yeah, it's one of those things. It's just like a culture can change the reactions to a thing, and yet fear. I don't know. Alfie, you go to a horror movie. Do people scream in the theater, like out of fear?
I haven't been to that many horror movies, but when I have, it's not less a lot of screams, but it's more so a lot of just, like you say, the or the oh god, like that guy. That happens a lot. Is people in England tend to shake a lot because it feels like they're holding it in. But I haven't heard many, like, you see, like, this is probably why like British Let's Players aren't as popular, just because, like, there's so many just, like, you people who, like, do horror games and stuff, they don't scream crazily, and you get that, like, reaction because sometimes it's funny to hear someone's, like, over exaggerated thing. No, I haven't had that experience.
That's so weird.
I heard a story about how when the Bela Lugosi Dracula movie came out, and people were like falling into the aisle, like screaming in horror, like, backing away from the screen and stuff. And you watch that movie now, and I think Ian, you've talked about this before, about how, like, pacing changes in movies, and, like, someone from the 1930s would not be able to watch the Benedict Cumberbatch Sherlock because it's a lot. And in the same way, if you took a horror movie from today, any horror movie, even the ones that, I'm not a huge horror fan, so I don't know what, like, a good horror movie of today is, but, like, you take a horror movie from today and show it to somebody from 1930, you're going to give them a heart attack. Like, that's,
yeah.
I mean, like, his horror from back then it was scary just seeing Lon Chaney's face without the mask or whatever, like in a Phantom of the Opera. Like, so horror, and a part of that is, like, once you show something terrifying, you have to up the stakes, and that's why horror has gotten scarier. But also, like, it does, there's a pretty unified, like, people were scared of that. I don't know if there was anyone in 1930 who was like, oh, this is just silly. Like, I'd say anyone who watched that was probably scared pretty good. But now you get, like you were saying, it's societal, and it's depends on the era. Because now, you'll have people who say, like, well, I don't know, Poltergeist or something that's more recent than the last 40 years, they'll say that's not scary, but I'll tell you what is scary, my mortgage, because, I'm going to die in debt and my kids are going to have to take care of it. Something like that that's more real and rooted is going to scare people more than, like, someone with fangs drinking your blood.
And I think that's actually a good place to transition here and talk about things that that are horror, but more based on like societal fears as opposed to like, oh, it's a serial killer chasing you through a hallway kind of thing, or it's a monster embodying sexuality in a Victorian age kind of thing. So like you got a lot of modern horror movies. It's unfortunate I've not seen either of these, but I know I'll stick with one of them just because it's more direct to my point. Get Out. That is a movie that is very much based on a real feeling, a real fear. When I worked at Goodwill, I had a buddy there. His name was CJ. He was black. I'm Hispanic. And so we had kind of a simpatico thing being two people of color from the Midwest. He was from Cleveland originally. And like, there are places where you're just, you don't have a problem. Like, I drive all over Fort Wayne. I don't feel unsafe really anywhere because it's my hometown and it's, you know, not a huge urban area, but it's more urban. I go out of town a little too far, go into the country a little too far, and I tend to get a little freaked. I dated a girl in high school who lived in Hoagland, Indiana, which is a town outside of Fort Wayne, but we're talking maybe like 20 minutes on the highway and you're there. So it's really nothing. It's a hop, skip, and jump, but it's rural. The rural dur.
I got that reference.
Yay! And so she invites me out to Hoagland Days, which is like a a town fair kind of thing. And I was 16, and I went, and my mom was like, "No, Ian, I don't want you going to that." I'm like, "But it's my girlfriend, so I'm going." And I did, and I should have listened to my damn mom because I got there, and besides some of the folks operating like the carnival rides, I was the darkest person there, and I got all the looks, and it's a very uncomfortable feeling to get that. There's a restaurant because my wife's family is you know more they her grandparents owned a farm. They gave the land away to the kids. All the kids except one sold their part of the land, so it became housing, but it's still technically a farm. Anyway, there's a restaurant just down around the corner. It's called 9 Mile because it's 9 miles between Decatur and Fort Wayne. And my wife's like, "Oh yeah, let's just go to 9 Mile." And I'm like an idiot. I'm like, "Okay." And we do. And the darkest person in the goddamn restaurant, and it's freaky. It feels weird. And so you've got this movie, Get Out, that's just all about it. And I remember I talked to Bud CJ about that, but like, oh yeah, no, if you're driving through the country, you go the speed limit, you do not stop. You just get done with it as soon as you can, because it's just very uncomfortable for a person of color to be in spaces that are almost entirely white. There's just this unsettling fear, and nothing necessarily even has to happen. And I think any person of color that's experienced this will probably admit to you there's a chance that perceived aggressions are more because they're in a more heightened state of sensitivity about those things than they are necessarily sure that they're happening. It's like when I went to 9 Mile and I felt very uncomfortable and I look around and I see an old woman just staring. I mean, maybe she's judging the fact that, you know, this white girl's out with a colored boy. Or maybe she's just an old lady just kind of staring up into space. I don't know. And I'll admit, in retrospect, it's kind of silly. In the moment, no, thank you. Mm-hmm. Please stop. It's very, very uncomfortable in that regard.
Well, and not to like de-emphasize like those fears, but you know, going back to like Dracula, that was also kind of it was also a metaphor. Admittedly, it was a little bit more racial in a bad way. Like it was, you know, about a white guy who's writing about this foreigner who's going to come and steal your daughters. And so like that was playing on fears also, just, you know, a lot less. It was basically the opposite of Get Out. You know what I'm saying? Like that horror has always been about that. It's just, you know, now it's easy to just watch a vampire movie and just watch it for the fun of like someone drinking blood and like the mythology of it. And it's easy to look past the racist part of it. And so, you know, that's always been a thing, I guess. But like you said, it's societal. Like 100 years from now, people may look at Get Out and say, wow, that's really quaint. And, you know, ideally in 100 years, we won't be in as racist of a society as we are now. So who knows? But like, that's something that we can look back at Dracula and say, it's really silly. Maybe they'll look at Get Out and say, that's really profound. I don't know.
I don't know. It's interesting, and I feel bad referencing a movie I keep wanting to watch, but you know how it is. You just never get around to it, kind of thing. And yeah, but like that's a movie playing on a very particular kind of fear that exists within communities of color, and it's just, you know, it's just interesting to see how that stuff kind of builds and how it works out. What is a piece of media? It can be a movie, it can be a book, whatever. What is a piece of media that you guys have seen that has played on a wider fear, I guess, than something just as simple as like insects? You know, something that is a bit of a deeper pull, or do you not have one?
Alfie, do you have one?
So just trying to think of like which would be a good example. The first thing I kind of go to is Lovecraft kind of things, because I think that plays up a lot of just like I remember I went through like a phase.
Speaking of racism,
yeah, there we go. There we go. It's always seeming there around with horror, like the idea that someone is going to judge you and attack you and harm you for whatever you are, even though you haven't done anything to them, it's just kind of again going back to that primal thing. So there's good material for stories, not so good in real life. But like, so I went through like a phase when I was just like, oh, I really like these stories. The guy's an awful person, but like I like the lore, I like the mythology, and I was also just kind of like reading a lot of Grant Morrison comics. So I was thinking like way too big brained for little boy Alfie. So I did get into a period when I was just like, oh fuck, is there anything? Is there any point? Is there like a lot of like Joker kind of images and stuff like that? I'm just playing up those fears of, are we just an insignificant speck of dust in the middle of an insignificant galaxy kind of idea? This whole thing we're living in now, does it have any real meaning? Does it have to have a meaning? Stuff like that freaked me out a lot more than it does now. I think that it does everyone on some level, but I've kind of gone past that now because I'm just kind of like, fuck if I can.
Yeah. No, I feel that the existential dread and the nihilistic bend. It seems like something that's just, it's too big for anyone to actually deal with. So like once you're aware of it, it's the scariest thing ever for a good year. And then you have to get over it. It's too big to worry about. And another great Ian quote. The nihilists are right. We're all just in denial. Is something I've kind of thought about too. It's like, yeah, nihilism's correct. Everyone's just in denial about it. So we're just kind of going through things, pretending like there's not just this cosmic guillotine hanging above us.
I think I am in denial. Like, so like, I'm a Christian, and so like I don't have the like, you know, what is there for us after death, because I feel pretty confident in that, and I know like Ian, you're correct me if I'm wrong, Ian, are you an atheist or an agnostic?
I'm an atheist.
Okay, I knew we had talked about that before, and so like, there's going to be probably some different views on that type of fear between the two of us. And for me, I don't necessarily have a fear about what's going to happen to me after I die, but I do, like, you know, I mentioned earlier, like I saw a post on the internet just recently where someone said, is this all there is to it? Like you work a job for 40, 50 years and then you die. Like what's the point of it all? And like, not even the like nihilistic version of that, but just like, me, like I work a job that requires a lot of physicality. Like it's a lot of lifting heavy furniture and loading stuff onto and off of vehicles. And like, I know that's not something I'm going to be able to maintain for the rest of my life. This is not a career that I can work. This is just a stepping stone to wherever. And what fills me with dread right now is, maybe I'm showing my hand too much, but hopefully no one I know is watching this, but what is next for me? Like, I have no idea because I get so anxious in job interviews. Like, I hate the whole process. I hate applying for jobs. I hate, like, you have to know someone to get a job. You have to have experience to get a job. And in order to get a job, like, you have to, it's just an endless cycle of BS. And, like, I just, that to me fills me with dread. Like, what am I going to do with my life? I don't know. Like, so I have to take it one day at a time and I have to be in denial. Otherwise, I will put myself into a little meltdown. And, you know, I'm sure for other people, I've never known what I wanted to do when I grew up. Like, when I was a kid, I was, for almost as long as I can remember, like, I remember I was in like first grade watching this video in the library at our elementary school, where it was talking about making comics. And I remember being fascinated by that since I was a little kid. And I've always thought that'd be an awesome job, but I never actually like thought there was any realistic way to pursue that. So like, when people would ask me what I wanted to do when I grew up, I didn't know, and I still don't. So like, that is a, you know, a real sense of dread for me. But again, like you said, I have to be in denial. Otherwise, like, I'll panic.
Techno Page. You should read Neil Gaiman's Techno Page because it's one of those things where like they put Neil Gaiman's name on it because it was his idea, but then the original company folded before he could ever do anything with it. But he'd written a really detailed outline, and then so years later, someone got the rights and hired a bunch of writers to you know, do it. And so it's like Neil Gaiman's Techno Page written by everybody else, but it's got the Gaiman seed to it, so it's kind of brilliant.
I love Gaiman seed.
Yeah, Gaiman seed. Oh man, that's unfortunate. That is an unfortunate combination of words. But no, like that series is very like existential dread, and it's got a bit of the Lovecraftian thing, and like it's so weird that it's this big multiverse kind of thing, but it's not like you're traveling between universes. But there's like this he's a fucking dinosaur. I really don't have anything else. It's a fucking dinosaur is the bad guy. It's a super intelligent psychic dinosaur that on occasion eats people and does shit to create just a hostile ass work environment to encourage people to just constantly stab each other in the back and just destroy people's souls, and it's a really, really interesting book. The pitch I had for it was the Techno Page and Darth Sidious would be like best friends.
Okay.
Because it's just it deals with the kind of that idea of the grind without any true purpose to it. If like, okay, yeah, you can grind yourself away every day for this, you know, for these kind of like capitalistic notions, but really it ultimately doesn't mean anything, and you're kind of promised rewards that are just there to be a carrot dangled in front of you. You want to hear another really good Ian quote I made up about my job one day?
I'm free right now.
All right. Chessex is not the land of the carrot and the stick. Chessex is the land of the stick and the stick that we painted orange and called it a carrot.
That's pretty cool.
I love that.
Yeah, it is unfortunate how true that is. But that's so you would be interested in that, Ruben. How hard an edge of horror it is, I can't really say, but it is really interesting, and it is playing on some of those fears, and the Technophage becomes a pretty creepy ass villain because of it.
That sounds really interesting. I need to look into that.
Yeah, I just found it at a thrift store for like $5, and it's easily like a $30 like thick trade kind of comic.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's a comic. Okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking because he does a lot of novels, so I thought maybe this is a novel. Wow.
It's a comic. There's a volume 2 that I haven't had a chance to read, but I really just volume 1 kind of ends so perfectly in like an ambiguous way. I don't know if I ever really want to read volume 2.
I hear that.
But I did really like volume 1. So I would recommend that. If you do read it, let me know. It'd be another fun one to do maybe like a review of or something.
Yeah.
So that is something that really deals with that. I'm trying to think of other things that deal with that kind of like career dread, and I don't think any of them that are coming to mind are horror. A bunch of them are more like dark comedies or more just like kind of think piece movies. So like Office Space, Fight Club. I'm trying to think of other movies that or other pieces of media that kind of play on that fear though.
Here's a weird one. Squidward from SpongeBob. Like there's a video I saw where he was where SpongeBob was not paying attention to something, and it maybe was the one with the bubble friend, I don't remember, but and Squidward said, "Here's how it goes. The customer orders the food, I give you the order, you make the food, we give it to the customer, we do that for 40 years and then we die." That sounds like a pretty good deal to me. And like as a kid, like I've seen so many people roughly our age who say like, as a kid, I wondered why Squidward was so mean. As an adult, I wonder why SpongeBob is so annoying. And it's like, I've never related to something so hard. Like I am 100% Squidward Tentacles in my job. And like, that is to me like, yes, that quote needs to be tattooed on my chest and face and every part of my body. Like that's just, and it's a comedy, like not even a comedy, but a kid's show comedy. Like children are not going to understand why that line is so funny and also like terrifying. But like, that's something that really resonates hard when you're in your 20s and up.
Mm-hmm. Here's one. Clerks 2.
Oh.
Clerks 2 has a very uplifting, and I mean Clerks as well, but Clerks 2 has a very uplifting ending in regard to that one. So yeah, Clerks and Clerks 2 is something. If you haven't watched those in a while, might be worth.
I've actually never seen the Clerks.
Okay, yeah, it's not one of those things where like you have to watch every movie in the franchise. Just watch the 2 Clerks movies. I think that would really do it for you. Again, it's definitely playing with that fear, but not in a way that's like horrifying. It's more just like it is a comedy, but it's definitely playing with those ideas.
And then the only other kind of thing I can think of that's sort of like that, at least in one part specifically, and maybe you could like someone who's looked deeper into this could like stretch it over the whole thing, but that's Cabin in the Woods. Specifically because of the ending of that. If any of you haven't seen it, I won't spoil it, but like because it's kind of a big thing. But like that kind of deals with some of the Lovecraftian kind of just is anything worth it, and kind of also mixing horror elements with the idea of workhouse, being in a job and nothing's really happening, and you're not seeing a future for anything, and everything just kind of day to day, even if that day to day is like horrific. There's kind of been a resurgence of that as well, and just stuff like Dark Souls and Bloodborne, where there's just been like people are seeking out this kind of existential thing, sometimes to laugh at it, because I think you kind of touched on a very good point there, Ruben, when you brought up like Squidward. We've been saying here and now and again, we're like, oh, you have to be in denial about it to move on. But I don't think that's given everyone kind of enough credit, because I feel like if you were in denial of it, you would never acknowledge it. But we as a human race, and especially like the smart fuckers who like write all these really funny things, they acknowledge it 24/7 because you have to, because it's part of some. If you acknowledged it. If you did acknowledge it, then you would be in denial. But once you acknowledge it, you can put that in part of your life, and then you can kind of focus on not letting fear cripple you, which is another thing that kind of happens. Is some people, rightly so sometimes, given some circumstances, is fear can just stop them from not even just some like sometimes after like a traumatic experience or a mugging or something will just not leave the house.
Yes. I get to talk about it. I wasn't gonna force it. But now I've got to force it.
Is this gonna be Paul Dini?
No.
Oh, okay.
Oddly enough, no. Good point too, but no.
I'll let you do your thing then.
I was gonna not bring up Green Lantern unless it came up, naturally. Jessica Cruz. I have never not read so much of a character but been so in love with the little bits I have read of Jessica Cruz. A woman who experienced a traumatic event and reacted with extreme agoraphobia. I think if I'm remembering her origin correctly, she like didn't leave her house for a year.
I think that's right.
Yeah, and she still has, even though she's a Green Lantern now, anxiety attacks. And like the whole thing about being a Green Lantern is you're supposed to be able to overcome great fear. And you have someone in Jessica Cruz who is at times literally paralyzed with fear. And that is what makes her such a she's like the perfect millennial Green Lantern. As much as I love Kyle Rayner, I think Kyle Rayner is the Green Lantern of Generation X. Jessica Cruz is truly the millennial Green Lantern, and Simon Baz exists.
Oh wow!
I mean,
I got a question for you. Have they ever had Sinestro meet Jessica Cruz?
I don't know. I don't read current Green Lantern comics anymore.
Really, I did not know that.
With the exception of Grant Morrison's The Green Lantern with Hal Jordan.
Because I don't read. I read even less than you do. But I find that potential, to go on the shipping, not even shipping, but the topic we did a couple weeks ago, like the idea of Sinestro and Jessica Cruz being paired up in like not a buddy comedy, but like these two have to work together situation. I think that could be really interesting. Like someone who harnesses fear and uses it, and then someone who is overcome by it and in great bouts. I think that could be very interesting, but for all I know, that wouldn't work. But that sounds.
I mean, the episode of DC Superhero Girls that introduced Jessica, that she fights Sinestro. So you got that.
Yeah.
And that's free to watch on YouTube if you really want to go seek it out. It ain't bad. They have her say chica too much. They're really like, yeah, she's Hispanic. I'm like, I get it. She doesn't need to say chica and throw like Spanish in every other word. It feels cheap. But like, no, so Jessica Cruz is a character I find just immediately relatable and really interesting, particularly because when they're talking about like fear and will to overcome and hope and all this stuff in Green Lantern, it's really, really cool, but it's also just... there's always this feeling of it being just a little vague. Like, okay, fear of what? What is the fear of? Is it of the giant yellow bug monster? Because that seems cheap. And so, like, fear of what? And then to create Jessica Cruz does seem like a really, really strong choice to me. And again, I think it's paid dividends because I've read and seen so little of her, but she's instantly Kyle, Jessica, Hal, John, Simon, Guy, if I had to rank them. And like, I really love Kyle Rayner, and I've barely read any Jessica Cruz, and she's already there for me, So to create a character that literally is overcome by fear, that is very relatable, is very identifiable, is just super interesting to me. And just it's such a good ass stroke. It's kind of amazing that it wasn't John's, because he's kind of known for all the. I don't think it was John's, because she was introduced after John's left. It's kind of amazing that that we introduced a character in the post John's rebirth of Green Lantern era, and she's probably the best thing to come out of Green Lantern since the emotional spectrum? Question mark?
I mean, what else is there, Ian?
I mean, there's a lot of there's Mogo. There's
That's
cool
not true.
shit.
I'll give you Moga.
Yeah.
And only Moga.
You won't give me nothing else. You won't give me like Bizzed. Bizzed
Speaking
is
of
one of my
Green
favorite Green
Lantern,
Lanterns.
speaking of Green Lanterns who are agoraphobic, Mogo doesn't socialize.
Get the fuck out.
I saw an opportunity. I had to take it.
Yeah, you took your shot. I respect that. No, but like that's definitely a thing though. With Jessica Cruz is very much in line with the ideas that Alfie was kind of talking about there. And I don't know, like with the Green Lantern, the whole thing becoming it became less about will itself and more like, okay, what is will? And kind of the purest expression of that is the ability to overcome anything, and in particular to overcome fear. And so the idea that a character who's, again, extremely agoraphobic and prone to anxiety attacks, the idea that they could overcome fear is and to such a degree that it makes them worthy of one of the most powerful objects in the universe is just a really, really cool idea.
I had an idea of where, before we get to the end of the podcast, an idea that possibly all three of us have experienced this particular mode of fear, but as air quotes YouTubers, we're not like big time by any stretch of the imagination, but if you are struggling to put out content, and then let's say you have a video that gets huge, and I guess this also goes to like, if you make a tweet and then suddenly that tweet gets insanely popular and gets a lot more votes or whatever, or Reddit or anything like that, and then you've got this sense of what next. Like on YouTube, like a couple years ago, I did a graphic novel review every day. I will never do that again. Like it wasn't even that I had a fear of failing. Like I was pretty sure I would do it, but it just took so much out of me. But like, I can see like people who have like millions of subscribers, they have this like where this is their career, and then you have YouTube constantly handcuffing them, trying to like, okay, we're cutting down on ads and stuff like that. That's got to be stressful for them. But also, like, you're just a drop of water in an ocean where if you are a Let's Player or a reviewer or whatever, you've got other people doing the same thing you're doing. So you have to try and find something that's different that works. And I could very easily see how there's a lot of like anxiety in that. Like you see like people on Twitter, they'll make a funny tweet and then it gets 25,000 retweets, and then they'll respond to it and say, oh wow, this got retweeted a bunch, I have anxiety, LOL. And I always think like, shut up, this is a public forum, like, you made a tweet, you have to deal with it. But also like, I can kind of see like, if you do that and then you get, your phone is dying because of all the retweets or whatever, and then like, are people expecting you to make equally funny retweets? Like, I can kind of, do you think there's something there?
Yeah. The fact that, again, problems that we didn't even know we'd have to deal with, like unique problems that have come with it. So like, anxieties that have been created around technology and social media. So we've got a social anxiety, we've got a media anxiety, and now they had a Frankenstein baby together, and it's even more awful. So like the pressures of trying to keep up with social media leading to just complete and total burnout it's weird. It's really, really weird to see how people just completely drop off on stuff because they're out of ideas, and social media requires you to be like, if you get popular on social media, you're interacting with people, it's no longer just the place you go to kind of like unwind for a few or make a funny joke or something. It's now a place where you have to be 100% on, otherwise you lose your entire career, and that's crazy. Like, you know, Philip Kelton, I'm sure you might be watching. Hey, Philip, I'll talk about this. Hope you don't mind. He's a guy that watches the show pretty regularly, and I really appreciate that. And like, he direct messages me on Twitter fairly recently, and before that, he used to send me direct messages on YouTube. And like, he'll have these questions, and half the time I don't respond to it because I'm just not in the mode. I'm not in the mode where I'm ready to be on, and I do this YouTube stuff for fun. I'm like, sometimes I want to be on, but I don't have anyone that wants to listen to me. Sometimes I don't really want to be on, and I just want to sit and watch TV, and I don't want to respond to like, oh, what if this happened in the DC universe kind of questions. And so like, when I see those, I'm like, it's, you know, me not responding is not a matter of me trying to be dick. It's like, yeah, I'm not into this right now. But you know, I have the luxury of doing that because Twitter and YouTube isn't my fucking job. Can you imagine if that was your job and like any time zone messaged you either have to be on or you have to just completely ignore everything, and that creates the anxiety because like, oh, what if I don't engage with this person who really likes my stuff? What if they stop following me, and then the people who only kind of like my stuff stop following me, and then and suddenly I'm homeless. Fuck that noise. That sounds terrible.
Yeah. That's why I think like the three of us, you know, all three of us make videos on our own channels, and we're in that sweet spot where we all have people who follow us, but this is not our job, and I would never want it to be my job. Like, you know, you might say, well, on the one hand, I'm not getting a hernia from lifting a couch, but on the other hand, like, you know, when I'm at my other job, I don't have to worry about like my social media, you know, what's the next idea? I just have to load furniture and that's it. And so like, it's like you said, it's a created fear that didn't even kind of exist 20 years ago. Within our lifetimes, this has kind of sprouted up, and it's really crazy how that pops up.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, Alfie, I wonder, have we got a couple minutes left in the episode, like 10 or so, but I wonder, have we touched on fear in the ways that you were expecting, or is there something that like we kind of haven't talked about in particular you were hoping for us to get into?
Well, I feel like the main thing that I wanted to get into, we kind of got into right away, which I was happy about, and then everything kind of spiraled naturally from there. But I did expect, like, we'd talk about, like, fictional characters, like the Jessica Cruz thing, Sinestro, Scarecrow, stuff like that. But, like, the whole idea of, like, cultural fears and racial fears and medias from that, and where does that come from? I didn't expect that to pop up, but I was happy it did, because I thought we got an interesting conversation going out of that.
Okay. I don't know. It's just, I wanted to make sure before we wrapped up too much, because I'm like, man, we've been all over the place on this stuff. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
All right. So, I'm trying to think of a good way to kind of like go out on this one and where to really end on it, because I guess we can go back to the Green Lantern thing, which is, so we know what fear is. We have a reasonably good understanding of that, and we talk about it very much as a primal thing. What do you do about it? How do you overcome? How do you deal with fear?
Right. So like, again, it kind of links back to the previous story I was telling you as well. I was like, I went through that phase when I went through a lot of that literature. I was reading a lot of stuff, and just I was doing philosophy and like things in life piled up, and you get, when you're at that age, I think I was like 14, 15, I was like thinking of things way too deeply and way too emotionally, and everything was the biggest thing in the world. And you used to kind of get lost in your own head for a bit there, and like, how do you come out of that? And the thing is probably why this character is like so like close to my heart, like specifically, is I would just read Superman comics, and I know that's probably like a very like cheesy example, but it's genuinely something. Is just like, I didn't even necessarily need them to be like the greatest fictional works ever made or something, but like even just a bog standard Superman comic, which I would rip to shreds now, is back then it was kind of like, okay, I've had a shitty day, I go home, I get lost in my own head. How do I get out of that? Oh, Superman saved the cat. That's nice. That cat's alive now in the comic book world. You know what? Cats are great. Like, they can be saved and stuff like that. That's a good thing. That matters. Or like just saying hi to someone when they're walking past and just having a smile. Like these like impermanent gestures of like joy are, and like moments in life, like experiences, are things only you can really have in the whole universe, because only you are you. And yes, everyone has their different shit, but everyone also has their different like joys. And I think that's very special, because like, as much as there's like, we're all made from the same carbons and materials and everything from the universe, we all came from like the same cells and all of that cosmological, like huge cosmic shit. At the end of the day, like, no one quite feels happiness the way you feel happiness because of your life experiences, and that shit's precious. And I think that's what gets me through a lot of things, and that's what Superman kind of like, because that dude's always talking about that shit, and I guess it kind of rubbed off a bit.
Okay.
Well said.
Yeah.
Because I kind of agree. Like, for me, like, I'll get home and, you know, if I had a rough day at work, like, I may just want to watch a movie or read a comic, and I may not enjoy it as much as I would have in high school. Like, overall, my high school was pretty, like, I had a pretty good high school life. Like, I didn't have a whole lot of stressful stuff going on. Classes weren't that hard. So, like, I could just, you know, dick around and, like, read comics all day and, you know, enjoy it. Now, if I'm watching a movie or reading a comic, there's going to be a part of my mind, in the, even if I'm really enjoying a show, that is going to be thinking about, man, that customer I dealt with today was just a jerk. Like, you know, there. So I'm not going to be able to just sink myself into it as much as I'd like to. But that is like, again, I hope my boss isn't listening, but, you know, she has this thing where, like, she thinks that you should find a job that you're really passionate about. And my response to that is, that does not exist for me. Like, no matter what job I find, I'm going to hate it because I'm at my job instead of at home reading a good book. And, like, for me, you know, that part of just, like, I'm there and I'm working and I'm doing what I need to do, but then when I get home, that's when I unwind. And so I agree with Alfie, like, finding, for me, like, the best way, you know, the existential dread stuff that I was talking about earlier, I just, you know, take it one day at a time, and then when I'm at home, I ignore it, and I just, you know, truly ignore it, and just, like, I'm going to watch even a terrible movie or something, just anything to take my mind off of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, distraction, or, well, that makes it sound negative. Escape into something just outside of yourself, something completely different, can really be a good way to deal with it. Oddly enough, I tend to kind of throw myself into things that deal more directly with some of the problems I'm having. That's how I tend to get, not get over, but deal with things, you know? Is like, and you and I have talked about this quite a bit, Ruben, where, like, you really aren't one for, like, some of the more thoughty, like, pieces, like, music especially. You don't like really heavy music, lyrically speaking, because you just don't like to think about those kinds of things. You just kind of prefer to, forgive me for the language here, I just lack good words to put it. You just tend to, like, try to put a shit off or ignore those kinds of feelings, or just not deal with them. Whereas, like, I really like music that's, like, clearly written by people who have serious mental problems that they're going through. Like, man, what's the line in the Bright Eyes song? I saw a child caught in the sad trap of gravity. He falls from the lowest branch of the apple tree and weeps on the ground, crying for his dignity. Next time he won't reach so high. Yeah, next time neither will I. And that is just some really sad shit right there. Like the one word in there that's like very, very important is lowest. The lowest branch of the apple tree was reaching too high. And that's like just a really like, so I like to listen to music and stuff that's like clearly by people who have much harder lives than I do. And it helps me deal with my shit. So it's funny enough, you know, I kind of started this conversation out by talking about, oh, like if someone appears when you stub your toe and go, oh, well, hey, this person broke their leg, so you should not complain. Well, actually, I kind of do that, though. Like, if I'm feeling kind of pissed off or kind of sad, I'll listen or watch something that's like much heavier than whatever I'm dealing with, and suddenly that makes me feel good. And I don't know if that's maybe a good idea or a terrible idea. It's just a thing that I do. So,
did you ever watch
the world?
Oh, go ahead.
I think that kind of like jumps right back to like the whole idea we had about like movies and stuff, like Jordan Peele specifically. So like he goes to make a movie like Get Out, and is in part, I don't want to speak for him, but I imagine it's because he's like, this is potential for like good horror, this is potential for like good entertainment and a good story, but like the most core of that I feel like is these are fears I'm having in this country, and I'm sure a lot of other people are having these fears, but they're not seeing that represented. And the worst possible feeling when you're scared is to feel like you're the only one who has that, and then there's something wrong with you. So I feel like even what you're kind of getting at is when you're like, if you can hear people who have similar experiences or even worse, knowing that you're not the only one is scared, that kind of solidarity is kind of comforting, because, you know, all right, maybe we may all be in like a rock hurtling towards the sun for death, but fuck it if we aren't all there together.
Yeah, I kind of like that. I think that's a good place to end if you guys are okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
All good.
Okay. So then it's my turn for a review topic. Man, I hate that I'm doing this to you guys, but I just, for some reason, the things I want to review are just requiring like a lot of pre-work. So I'm not going to take over like for a month again or anything, but you're going to have to watch 3 movies for next week, because I watched these just on a whim, and now I really, really want to talk about them. So we're going to review the Batman Unlimited trilogy, I guess, that's available on Netflix.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, they're like an hour and a half a piece, so it's not like I'm asking you to commit 9 hours Lord of the Rings style, but yeah, I understand that can be a bit of homework, and I'm going to say this, I'm going to put a rule on watching these. Watch them on separate days, because if you watch them all in one go or something like that, you will be very bored. I think it'll have a very negative effect on the quality of the media if you try to watch them all in one go. They're not bingeable, I'll say that much. Yeah, so just make sure to watch like one day, and maybe you could do 2 in a day, but like separate it out a good chunk. Because I'm curious what you guys are going to think of these, and I just kind of want to talk about them. Alright, that'll do it for this episode of Geeky Gentlemen, everyone. Thank you very much for watching. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
I'm the Comics Kid 2099.
And I'm just a geek for fun.
And we are your Geeky Gentlemen, and we will be discussing things.